Hello everyone, welcome to Katharine's Creatures. This is episode 52, and this is a series where we get a touch base and talk about various mythological creatures, beast beings, and the like, pulled from lore worldwide. I always like to preface by saying that I am not a linguist, so if I mispronounce anything along the way, I apologize in advance. And I also apologize that at the time of filming, I'm kind of getting over some kind of head cold thing, so I know I'm not looking my best, but that's not the point. The point is what we're going to be talking about today, and this week's topic is going to be on the Chenoo. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Chenoo. And this is a sort of evil spirit from Algonquin folklore, and it is a sort of cannibalistic ice giant. You heard me right. So this is pretty cool because these Chenoos are supposed to be larger than the average man, and have these fangs that are always exposed because they have chewed off their chewed off their lips. There you go. And this probably has something to do with the fact they have like this huge hunger, and the hungrier they are, the larger they become. So they kind of expand and grow bigger and bigger the more they need food. Of course, unfortunately, the food source is human beings. Now, the Chenoo are supposed to be, or actually were originally humans, and in some way they are either corrupted by dark magic or cursed to become these monsters where they're forced to eat human flesh to stay satiated. Their bodies actually radiate and are extremely just warm, like almost unbearably, excruciatingly hot. And an only way they can kind of counter this is to live in the snow. And they live away from people, out in the snow, where just being around the ice and cold helps kind of regulate their body temperature. Now, a lot of the stories that deal with Chenoo from Algonquin folklore actually come from the point of view of the Chenoo itself, which I thought was very interesting, that lures through the eyes of what we perceive as the monster. Now, these creatures can be killed. There are several different ways in the lore, and it is noted that sometimes they need to be killed more than once because it doesn't take the first time. It may not take the second time or the third or the fourth, but eventually you get the job done. Some of the better methods to destroy a Chenoo is chop the body up into lots of little pieces. Makes sense why that would work. And the more popular and very common belief is you have to destroy their icy heart. Now, in order to destroy that, there are a couple ways, so approaches that make things a little easier. One is to trick them to eat salt, so the salt will melt the heart and thus destroy the Chenoo. Another one is to feed them enough food that they end up getting so sick that they vomit everything up, including their icy heart, where you can go and grab it and destroy it. Fun stuff. Now, there are some specific stories that are associated with the Chenoo. One of them is The Girl in the Chenoo, and if I remember this one correctly, this story kind of goes where a sister and her two brothers left their tribe and were out in the wilderness when they started getting stalked by a Chenoo, and at first kind of misperceive the Chenoo's footprints as bear prints. A little later in the story, I think the sister gets a little smart and puts down her basket full of berries and lays down a bunch of these bear furs that she's been toting around with her, and allows the Chenoo to approach her, whereupon she pretends that she believes the creature is actually her grandfather. The creature's taken aback and doesn't know what to do about this and doesn't really want to correct her. So, for the remaining time that they're out in the wilderness, he mimics or tries to pretend to be these three siblings' grandfather and actually assists them with hunting and chopping wood and other tasks that they do day to day. Well, eventually the siblings want to return back to their tribe, and the Chenoo actually kind of wants to go with them. So he does make a request and asks that they build a sweat lodge in the village for him. And they do it. And so the Chenoo goes into the sweat lodge and so uncomfortable with being so warm that it causes him to vomit. Lovely. And cough up his icy heart, whereupon he destroys it and becomes a human again and is able to live out his rest of his days in the village among the people, which is kind of a sweet story ending, which is surprising when you think of what kind of monster the Chenoos are. On the flip side, potentially, there's another story called The Girl Chenoo, I think it's the translation, and this story's, well, we'll get to that moment. This story kind of goes along the way where the girl, human at this point, rejects a man's advances and is not into him, says no, no means no. He doesn't really like that, so he curses her to become a Chenoo. And after she transforms into this monster, she realizes what happened to herself and figures out a way to approach her family and convince them to shoot her 7 times in the heart, destroying her heart. That's as much of the, and then because of that, alleviating the curse. That's as much of that story that I know. So if anybody knows what happens to her, I'm curious, did this have a happy ending? Kind of like the first one where she turns back to being a human, or is this a sad ending? I don't know, like I said. But either way, this kind of cannibalistic ice giant, I thought was pretty cool, literally, physically, literally, cool for a winter creature. And if you have any questions about this or anything else, post them in the comments below or reach out to me on any of my social media. And until next time, Skål.